Call to order the Wednesday, May 1st regular meeting of the Chicopee School Committee. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. In compliance with open meeting law, we are right now recording and live broadcasting this meeting. Is anyone in the audience recording or live broadcast? Recording the meeting. I don't think you're live broadcasting, but you could be. Anyone? Seeing none, we'll move on to any of our school committee members joining us remotely. It looks like everyone is here in person except for Doug. Is he joining us remotely? No?
Let's see him.
Okay. At this time, I'd like to take a moment of silence. We'll observe that for all those who serve in the military and for all those who protect us. Thank you. Sarah, could we have a roll call for attendance?
Review.
Here.
Ms. Russo? Here. Mr. Barcelo?
Present.
Mr. Dowd?
Here.
Mrs. Perrette?
Present.
Mrs. Schofield?
Here.
Mr. Brooks?
Here.
Mr. Lamoth?
Here.
Mr. Gerard? Mr. Bernard?
Here.
Mrs. Lopes?
Present.
Mr. Zatella?
Yes.
11 present, 1 absent.
Thank you. Public announcements by committee members. I'll start to my left with the vice chair.
Yes, I attended a Chicopee Comp today where they received the 24 GT Mustang. The kids were very excited about it. I'd like to make sure that we send a letter of thanks to the Marcotts if we haven't already, Marcotte Ford. We may have when we voted for it. One observation that I happened to be privy to is one of the Marcotts turned to somebody, either Carl or the superintendent, I'm not sure which, and said, geez, I'm surprised the kids don't have their phones out videoing this. And we explained to them that they're not allowed to have their phones out. He goes, well, I guess they follow the rules. It was nice to hear. And the other thing that I'd like to say is I'd like to say that they had a comp cleanup day, and I guess they had close to 100 people show up for the event, and they did a nice job. And I'd like to thank the students, staff, and parents that showed up to do that.
Fantastic. We want to have the cleanest city in Western Mass. That's our goal. Thank you. And Don, all set?
All set.
Sonny Brooks.
I'm good, thank you.
Grace Schofield.
I just want to piggyback on what Mr. Lamoth said with regard to the Mustang being delivered from Marcotte Ford today at Comp. I want to give a shout out to Mr. Gerton and Mr. Ingram there, because it's all about forming relationships, and if it wasn't for those relationships, it was that they formed with Marcotte Ford. Some of the information that Marcotte had shared with the crowd was that 10% of the staff at Marcotte are comp graduates from the CTE program. So I thought that was a formidable statistic to share, and it all started with relationships.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks.
Thank you. Susan Lopes.
I think it best to make mention that I received a letter from one of our students today. Jalen is her name, and I'm not sure if I'm the only one that received this letter, but perhaps others did, other school committee members did, but it's talking about a civics project that they're working on. They, meaning a class, it's a class project, and they would like to extend the time between classes from 3 minutes to 5 minutes. And they do have some good justification points for us very much considering to have this happen in our schools, our high schools. So I'd like to refer that at some point to perhaps our policy or superintendent. I did forward you the email today, and I was wondering if it would be appropriate if you made mention as to give me some direction here, please.
Mm-hmm. And so I just saw it, so my apologies. I did see it briefly. So speaking about passing time and anything related to that, that actually directly relates to time on learning. So that's something that we would have to talk to the principal about and see how we make those minutes. So I appreciate the students speaking about a civics project, because I know they do this every year, but I also would like to communicate to the students about the regulations that the state of Massachusetts expects us to uphold when it comes to the minutes in the classroom versus the minutes in the hallway.
Okay, I'll make those notes and send this woman, this young lady, another email in the morning.
Yeah, I think it should be a
Regulations.
conversation though, like because I don't know if she's aware of that. So that is a good point to bring up to students.
I think it's the beginning part of the project. So state regulations and time of learning.
Time on learning. Yes.
Time on learning. Okay, those two are biggies that will be impediments that are challenges to this happening.
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Chet Satella. I'm all set. And we'll go to Sandra Perrott.
Hi, it's a lot of good things are happening in the city of Chicopee. I'd first of all like to say thank you to our principals because May 1st is National School Principals Day. So thank you for all that you do for our students and teachers and everyone in the building and for creating the culture that you do in your school. And again, we'll reiterate because not enough thank yous can be said to the students for the great work that they did at Chicopee High and Chicopee Comp and around Chicopee for the recent cleanup. So that's wonderful. And also, congratulations. I saw recently that Joshua Perry, a senior at Chicopee Comprehensive High School, was named the Outstanding Vocational Student of the Year. That's fantastic. Congratulations to Joshua and his family. And he also won the first ever for our school at the Skills USA, the first ever medal in internet working competition. So congratulations, Joshua. And not only is he a student at Chicopee Comprehensive High School, but he's taking courses at the Elms College. So he's one busy young man. And also congratulations to all of our students who participated in the state competition for Skills USA. We're so proud of you. And again, thank you to Marcotte Ford for the wonderful relationship that you have with our students in providing the 2024 Ford Mustang that you did to further educate our students and helping them train with cutting-edge technology and the types of mechanics that are in the automobile industry today. So thank you so much.
Deanna Russo
I'm all set.
and Jason Doubt.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to give a generalized, as we, this time of year, you know, we tend to get invitations to all sort of graduations and NJHS ceremonies and all sorts of just wonderful things that are happening in our school. So I think I speak on behalf of all of the school committee members. You know, we are aware, you know, we're so happy to be invited to these and celebrate in these moments and everything. We're aware these are happening. You know, I know I speak for myself. I wish I could personally attend every single one of them, you know, and that is a challenge. So just to generalize, you know, there's some amazing things happening in our schools. You know, our graduations, our NJHS and everything in between. And just, you know, I hope we continue to get these invitations. And it's a great problem to have to not be able to make it to everything because it just goes to show the great things that are happening in our schools. Thank you.
Thank you, Ron Bernard.
All set. Thank you, Mayor.
And David Barslow.
Nothing tonight, Mayor.
And Superintendent Ware.
Thank you, Mayor. I just like to a couple of brief announcements. On Friday of last week, the Stefanik Stars welcomed the governor to our school, and it was in respect for Earth Day and also Arbor Day. They planted the 40,000th tree at Stefanik. The first and second graders were in attendance, and they had smiles on their face. They had welcome bags for the governor as well as other state officials in delegation. The mayor was present as well. When we actually started this initiative, which was driven by Miss Amanda Therio, the principal at Stefanik, it was not thought to be as large as it turned out to be. So it expanded, it grew, and it was a great day for the city of Chicopee, and I just want to give a shout out to the Stefanik Stars over on under Ms. Therio's direction. Today, I had the opportunity to sit in Senor Gomez's Spanish class at Chicopee Comp, in which she wanted me to participate in conversation with the students, in which they knew that I was bilingual. So we had a dialogue about the importance of being bilingual, and so I just want to give a shout out to those students in that class. They asked awesome questions, including what does it mean to be a superintendent and what fun do I have? So I gave them awesome answers. And last, certainly not least, last night we participated in the Grinspoon Award ceremony that was held at the Log Cabin, in which we honored our 8 recipients from the district, which were Miss Elizabeth Bouye, Mr. Seth Boudreau, Miss Kelly Walsh, Miss Kimberly Villegas, Miss Natalia Borowick, Miss Denise Grinya, Miss Chelsea Menard, and Miss Senora Daisy Cruz. And they were 8 of the 47 that were nominated originally, but they 8 that were advanced. And it was a really good night. And again, I just want to give a shout out to those teachers and for all that they do. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Ware. Public input, we don't have anyone signed up. We can move right on to our visitors. We have Student Advisory Council. Anyone here?
Mr. Mayor, unfortunately, we didn't hear back from them to confirm, so they are not in attendance.
Okay, we'll go to the assessment presentation by Jennifer Belleville, the Assistant Superintendent for Instruction and Accountability. Welcome, Assistant Superintendent.
Thank you so
Can't
much.
speak today.
I don't see it on the screen. So, but I know you all have hard copies, so we definitely can add it and upload it afterwards. So, no, I have. So, so tonight I'm here to kind of give you an overview of what our MCAS scores were for last spring, what we kind of found our challenges, as well as some highlights, and look at the work that we did this year, obviously being new to the district, where we kind of took a deep dive, as well as what we're looking forward to in the future. So on the first slide, we talked about enrollment. So I know that you saw this graph when Superintendent Ware did his entry plan, but just to kind of give you an idea of where we serve. So last year when MCAS was taken, obviously there was 8,000 students in the district. We're at 7,900 and something. But our enrollment does fluctuate a little bit. However, more importantly is the demographics on the next page. So Superintendent Ware talked a little bit about this in his entry plan, but I wanted to take a little bit of a deeper dive with you. So our demographics in Chicopee have changed significantly in the past 5 years. Our level of need has changed significantly in the past 5 years. And we have to remember, in those 5 years, we also had a pandemic. So there's been a lot. But the high needs population in 2018 and 19 was at 60.7%. In 23-24, it's 72.7%. That's a 12% increase, which is equivalent to 960 students. So that high needs population has increased significantly. Even in looking at our students with disabilities, we have 160 more students on IEPs than we did 5 years ago. So that level of need is really important when we're looking at our academic achievement, and what we're doing to serve those populations. Our attendance has been an enormous focus this year. As you can see, our attendance rates over the past 5 years, especially last year, all students, only 90% of them attended. That was our average attendance rate, as well as for all students who are chronically absent, 33.7% of them. 33.7% of them were absent 18 or more days last year. So if students aren't here, we can't teach them. So we need to get them in our doors first so that we can address their learning and their learning needs. So our attendance rates by school. I wanted you to really see this because this has been such a huge focus for our students and for our principals this year. They have been pushing absenteeism. You hear about family and community engagement officers. We have principals making phone calls. We have incentives going on. We want our students in the door. If you notice the chronic absenteeism rate from 22-23 to 23-24, you'll notice a decrease in many of those numbers by 10%. That's huge. Our students are coming more. And we want to continue to push that because our absenteeism is still high, and it's something that we want to continue to address. But we are getting them here more frequently. In moving to MCAS, MCAS was last year. It occurs in the spring every single year. So I wanted to walk you a little bit through grades 3 through 8. So on the first page is just the comparison of Chicopee to the state. One thing that I do want to point out to you is globally, in grades 3 through 8, only 29% of our students are meeting or exceeding expectations. That's an alarming number. And we're lower than the state average. For English language arts, we broke it down for you by school for all grade levels. As you look through slides for the grades 3, 4, 5, I want you to remember that last year was the first year of implementation of CKLA K-5. So that was a brand new English language arts curriculum that was implemented. We also know with implementation, sometimes we do see an academic dip, but we did have good news because we had a lot of schools make some progress. For grades 6, 7, and 8, last year, they were still using the SAVIS curriculum. This year, we actually spent a lot of time reviewing for a new curriculum, and we're adopting a new curriculum for next year. In grades 6, 7, and 8, we saw there's also a significant weakness in writing. And that has been a focus of Principal Holt as well as Principal Endelos. For grade 10, I want to remind everybody that this is a graduation requirement. We do provide opportunities for our students who do not meet expectations in grades 11 and 12 to retake the MCAS, as well as to have an educational proficiency plan. So we do everything we can to make sure that they meet this requirement for the state so that they are able to receive their diploma. For mathematics in grades 3 through 8, we used Envisions. Next year, we are up for our K through 5 math review, and we'll be looking at a few programs for K to 5 for mathematics. As you see, mathematics is really no different than English language arts. Only 26% of our students are meeting or exceeding expectations against state standards.
Are you taking questions now, or do you want to wait till the end?
If you could wait to the end, because I might answer it at some point. That's my hope. In grades 6, last year we used Glencoe Math. It was the last year of Glencoe Math, and this year we started the year in rolling out a new 6 through 12 math curriculum, which was Reveal, and we spent a large portion of this year around professional development and around math practice standards. For grade 5 science and grade 8. So grade 8, we have amplifying science. For grade 5, we use mystery science. We also have our STEAM labs, and we use STEM scopes. One thing that we do need to point out is just the time on academics, especially in the lower levels around science. So obviously in our younger grades, we spend a lot more time on English language arts and mathematics. We are looking at time on academics across the board to make sure that they're equitable in all of our schools, and to look at how we utilize our WIN block, and to look at our science curriculum as a whole. We will be reviewing a biology curriculum next year for science.
But this says it's for science.
So really, I want to talk about the highlights of this data. So MCAS data is kind of funny data. It's obviously a snapshot in time. MCAS can tell us a lot about the curriculum we use, the implementation of the curriculum we use, but it's not live data that we can make significant impact on for students. We use our benchmark assessments for that. So our benchmark assessments that are done multiple times during the year. However, there are some highlights from last year's MCAS. For the accountability for our schools, 8 of our schools made substantial progress towards targets. 4 schools made moderate progress towards targets, and only 1 school made significant progress. So though I know that data is not where any of us in this room want it to be, as far as our students meeting or exceeding state standards, we're making progress. There was a movement. There was also a focus last year around the benchmark assessments, looking at the data teams, as well as implementing high-quality instructional material, which was that CKLA, as well as we adopted 3 cheers for preschool. So, and obviously we want to be starting as young as we possibly can for the early literacy. The biggest challenges that we had last year was obviously our attendance. That and some of our vertical and horizontal alignment as far as the curriculum and the rigor of the curriculum. Our subgroups also are of great area of concern. So our students with disabilities, our English language learners, and our high needs students. Our students with disabilities and our English language learners, if we delve deeper into MCAS data, are averaging 0 to 3% for meeting or exceeding expectations. So that is some subgroups that you will hear that we've been spending a lot of time focusing on, and how do we close that achievement gap. One of the other challenges too has been around Tier 2 instruction. So Tier 1 is what every student receives, and Tier 2 is that plus more of really delving in and being able to hit the targets of where our students are not performing where we'd like to be. So we've done a couple of things this year in looking at what can we offer for our Tier 2 structure, as well as what can we offer for our Tier 2 curriculum. So our key actions, so this is this year. Our principals have significantly focused on attendance. So we're getting them here. Now, once we're here, what are we going to do? So we added the additional content specialists at our middle schools, as well as the 4th VPs at our high schools. We implemented Reveal for 6 through 12 for mathematics. We've spent a lot of time with Dr. Stolar reviewing our inclusion models, our substantially separate programs, as well as the curriculum that we provide for specifically designed instruction. We are also working with the statewide systems of support. So the statewide systems of support came into the district specifically to work with Chicopee High. However, we took a different approach this year. And we said, well, we could focus on one school, but that's not really going to help us vertically or horizontally. So we have brought in all of our middle and high schools into the statewide system of support. We've been focusing on their instructional leadership teams. We've been doing walkthroughs. We've been looking at student work samples. They were with us yesterday, and we were looking at student work samples. Next week, we have 2 days with them, setting some prioritization. But they've spent a lot of time with us, really helping us to look at our data, but also to look at some commonalities between all of our schools. We also, in 2 of our elementary school, we brought in a Tier 2 math intervention, which was called Bridges. They love it. It's phenomenal. Math is really hard after that Tier 1 level to find a Tier 2 program. Bridges is probably one of the best out there. All of our elementary schools will be using Bridges for Tier 2 intervention next year. We've also been doing a lot of work with consultants around our English language learners, as well as for mathematics. We brought in Allison Mello, as well as Mike Flynn in the secondary level. Part of the reason we brought them in was a lot of times when you teach mathematics, you teach procedural. You don't teach a lot of student discourse, you don't teach a lot of higher order thinking, and that productive struggle. So when you walk into some math classes now, you can see learning walks kind of going on. You can see students on whiteboards talking about how they got to the answer, really knowing and understanding how they get to the solution. For our English language learners, we've been really doing a deep dive into the curriculum we offer, what we're doing around proficiency level, and the level of instruction that they're getting. Cynthia Shonigal is the director of L, and she's been spending a lot of time in classrooms and auditing that, as well as auditing our staffing structure. Do we have enough staff to support the level of Ls that we have and the needs that we have? We've also been looking at horizontal and vertical teams and our time on academics. We've been doing the English Language Arts Review with 6 through 12, and we're adopting HMH, which is considered by the state a high-quality instructional material. With that, I recently just met with content specialists, coaches, and those content specialists that were hired at the middle school to talk about when we roll out a curriculum, what are the expectations around that? So we've actually developed a 12-month professional development plan, and they as a team are meeting with the company in May, and we're going to talk about what are the non-negotiables for every educator who is teaching this program. What then are we going to do for curriculum mapping? Where are we putting in our novels? What is the level of rigor? What is that expectation around the horizontal alignment? So if I have a student at Bellamy, they're receiving the same instruction as they are at DuPont. We're also, I was going to say, I think that's a lot that we've been doing. I could keep going. So I think a lot of it too is we've also been kind of identifying as we rolled out CKLA, what were those expectations around that? And do we need to kind of back up the bus a little bit and go back, revisit those expectations, revisit for all of the things that we do, and looking at our curriculum maps. So in looking forward, what's the plan for next year and beyond? So obviously attendance we need to continue to focus on. So obviously Assistant Superintendent Cruiser spending a lot of time, especially around that family and community engagement and even social emotional. Why aren't kids coming and working to get them here? We will continue to look at that vertical and horizontal structure pre-K to 12 and beyond. What are our structures, what's in place, and what are the expectations, and how are we holding everyone accountable to those expectations? Obviously, with the implementation of a new curriculum, there's going to be a lot of professional development around that. We also are piloting an English language learner curriculum for grades 6 through 9. And I know you might ask, well, why 6 through 9? Because this curriculum is hand in hand tied to the program that we just bought for next year, HMH. The language is the same. However, first it teaches the students the vocabulary that they need, the academic vocabulary, and it builds them up so that when then they are able to be in an English classroom, participating with their peers, they already have that foundation. So we're excited to see that. We're also doing our math review. We will continue to work with Dr. Stutler around special education, especially our inclusion model. How do we get more students into our inclusive settings? We're also going to continue to work with the statewide system of support, and we'll continue to do an assessment review. So we currently do benchmark testing 3 times a year with Acadians and NWEA. And we want to make sure that the data that we're collecting, A, is the right data, and B, is being utilized on a daily basis to drive instruction, as well as a focus on professional development. So one of the goals for next year is to also be able to provide more professional development after school and provide opportunities to teachers because we know time is limited. So now, if you have any questions.
Any questions? Comments? Sonny Brooks.
Parental involvement, attendance, homeworks, all the involvements. What is our plan to get more parents involved? Because everything starts at home. If we don't have that parental involvement, I mean, the kids are not going to they're not going to prosper if their parents aren't pushing them in some way. What are we doing to look towards that to improve that?
So one of the first things we did this year was we adopted Parent Square. And so we've been utilizing that a lot more for communication, but definitely with the family and community engagement officers, we're working on that as well. Principals are doing more outreach. We're standardizing letters that are going out. Ms. Cruiser's office is constantly working on this. I feel like you should answer this, Carol, because if you want to jump in, please do, because there are so many initiatives that are coming out of her office as well to help support this.
So We also are doing home visits. The family liaison's doing home visits. The truancy officers are doing positive home visits. Some of the principals are doing home visits to meet them where they are. We're also doing enrollment activities, actually starting next week at the schools. So we're going to the schools for some enrollments, and then we're going to have some community enrollments at the library and other places in the community. So we're trying to go out to them and meet them where they are. And in addition, we are trying to continue to hire family liaisons that can reach our communities, that speak different languages, that can help us make sure that we're getting the right information to them. That's an increase. We've also increased the family engagement just by the town halls the superintendent has been doing, which has been well received. We're also trying to plan a lot more community events. So I can't say enough about Kristen Coella, our new family coordinator, who is really trying to combine a lot of what the school's doing and a lot of what the community is doing and just meet them and talk to them and get to know them. So we're having a lot of success, and we hope that we can continue that this summer.
Thank you.
Thank you. Grace Schofield.
Well, thank you for all the information, and obviously looking forward as far it's necessary to collect all this data and everything. So I appreciate the work that went into this. I just had a question with regard to there's so many directions which we need to move in, so many. So I like the way you listed them and like mentioned, specifically what needs to be done in each area. I just want more information or detail with regard to reaching out to the statewide support system. So could you I know that you said that they were here visiting and then you read student samples. So can you just give me like a snapshot of when you reach out to the state, what does that mean and how does that work?
So we don't reach out to the state. The state says, guess what? We're coming to see you.
Okay.
So we've had a partnership with the statewide system of support for a while now, and part of that has been around Chicopee High and underperforming. And so with that, we really took the approach this year around expanding that to both middle schools as well as Chicopee High, Chicopee Comp, and Academy. So they come in, they provide professional development, we look at our data, we look at some of those instructional priorities. A lot of that focuses around our students with disabilities, as well as our English language learners, because that's where our biggest disparity is in our achievement data. So they come on learning walks with us, they provide feedback, they help us do planning, they help us look at data. But they were most recently here because as we're moving forward to looking at our 2 days next week with them and really rebuilding the prioritization plan for next year, we wanted to look at student samples. So they only looked at student samples for students in grades 6 through 12, and what we did was we had the principals send what a student produced in a lesson and what was the standard of that lesson, and then what was the student outcome. And we had some questions of what did that say? Was the standard aligned to the grade level and to the course that was being offered? What was the level of rigor? Could we see if the student had received mastery on that? So as we were doing that, we didn't think it was necessarily fair to do it just 6 through 12. And really, I wanted to see work samples across the district. So we have work samples K to 12, and we'll be spending some time with the principals looking at those work samples and asking. When we go into classrooms, a lot of times we're focused on a teacher and what's being instructed. We also need to really focus on what that student experience is and what are they getting out of it, and what are they producing, and are we putting in front of them grade level material that meets his standards and has a high level of academic rigor.
Thank you. And so that clears that up a little bit. I misunderstood the way that was worded as far as reaching out. And you also mentioned something about having enough teachers and paras or instructional leaders to meet the needs. Where are we at that?
So one of our biggest struggles is around certified teachers in special education as well as English language learners. However, we have received 2 grants, especially around getting staff certified in English language learner certification. We were actually surprised. We had 8 of our current paraprofessionals who were interested, or a couple teachers who wanted to actually go from a classroom to teaching students, with multilingual learner students. And so they're going through a program, and we're supporting them, and we're trying to find other alternatives, also working with local colleges around that certification. We know that there's a shortage with teachers in those areas. I will say we have been able to hire a few. We're in a much better place now than we were at the beginning of this school year.
Thanks. Thanks a bunch.
You're welcome.
Don, do you have a question?
When we break down the data, do we look at subgroups to see where they're at, like the L group,
Yes.
the high needs group?
Yes, so I can tell you off the top of my head, Mr. Lamothe, that our students with disabilities, as well as our English language learners, across the board, none of those populations are larger than 3% in meeting or exceeding expectations. All of them are partially meeting or not meeting expectations. They are significantly behind, and it needs to be a huge area of focus for us.
So when we look at, say, a Bowie versus a Bow, do we look at the demographics to see,
Yes, we do.
and do they match up?
So
If you're a high
demographically,
needs- if you're a high needs person in Bowie, do you match up to the high needs person in Bow?
yes, it's across the entire district that those populations are struggling.
Okay.
It does not matter which elementary school you're in, or which middle school, or which high school.
Because just looking at the raw data, I look at it like a Stefanik, and I know that that's a high needs population,
Yeah.
but they seem to be doing better than some of the other schools. That's why I was curious.
Yes, no, our subgroups, so we have pockets of movement, but our subgroups are stagnant.
Okay. And do we look at the experience level of each school to see how we're doing there?
So that's what we've been spending a lot of time on. So one of the things that we've started to work on is that time on academics. So do all schools have a win block? Do all schools teach a minimum of 60 minutes for mathematics?
What's a win block?
A win block would be, so I love this, it's a whatever I need block. So that's a lot of times where you get that remediation, or you kind of get that deep dive or that deep dose of whatever it is you need. Maybe I need a higher level book and I'm reading a novel study, or maybe I'm working on my phonics because that's what I need. But this is a conversation we've been having with all of the principals, and that's why when we looked at bridges for a math intervention, we started it at 2 schools, and we then are going to expand it. The other thing we've been looking at is, due to the pandemic, we flooded, because we needed to, instructional technology. So you have all of these instructional technologies at all of these schools, but we're not creating similar experiences. And we're not creating necessarily similar language. So part of what we've been doing this year is really looking at, what are we utilizing? Mm-hmm. Are we utilizing it well? Are we getting the best bang for our buck? As well as minimizing that a little bit. So we're going to be pulling some of those platforms away and creating uniform platforms across, just to look at that as well.
I know that based on conversations I've had with other school districts, we're a high population of paras.
We are.
Is it effective? Number one, is it effective? And do you see us sustaining that in the budget as we move forward?
You need to tap into the mic.
I didn't hear all this questions.
Let me ask it again.
Yeah.
Looking at other school districts, I know that we have a high population of paras to help our students, which is good.
Mm-hmm.
Is this sustainable in our budget?
Mm-hmm.
And do you see it going forward as increasing, decrease, staying the same?
Right now, we're looking at to maintain it. So I would say right now, you're absolutely right. We do have, when it comes to staffing structures in our district, we do have a high number of paras per schools. So for example, just to break that down for the public, so it is very common to see a paraprofessional in grades pre-K or K through 2. And then when you move into higher levels of education, you actually see the pullback of paraprofessionals, except for in the arenas of English language learning and special education. So we are very fortunate. We actually, a lot of our paras, we have a higher number, meaning like we have schools where there's a para in all of our elementary classrooms, and that was done over time, clearly. And so what what you will see in comparison to other districts, no, they do not utilize the model that way. So when it comes down to what we've added to classroom, it's directly in alignment with SOA, so meaning high needs. So the fact that we actually have been recognized by the state that our high needs or our decile, as Mr. Mayarecki would say to you, has increased. We're at 70.99% right now, or decile 11. If we pay attention to that number, because that extra boost in income or revenue from the state actually can help us sustain it. However, if that shifts, if that drops below 70, then we are talking about dollars being removed from our budget, and then the question will come into, it will get called into question, our staffing structures throughout the schools. So what I will say at this time is that we've been able to sustain it because of the blessing of SOA. However, that will have to be closely monitored so we don't end up being in a bad position where we have to talk about the staffing structure, meaning like paras or any other person, because I know you asked about paras, but I'm just saying across the board, we look at staffing structures to see if they're sustainable.
Thank you.
Sure. Susan.
Thank you. Please correct me if I'm wrong. Are there plenty of our students that are not included on these demographics?
Oh, on your demographics data?
Yes.
Yes, I just gave you, the high needs categories.
Okay. We're taking good care of them as well, correct?
100%. So the reason for giving you those high needs populations is because those are the populations that we've really seen the biggest influx in. And so that's that level of need that we talk about, that we really increase that level of a need. But as far as all students, because I do agree with you, we spend a lot of time talking about the students that we need to catch up. So what are we doing for the students? Obviously we have many other students, but one of the recent conversations that I've engaged with, and I'm having a lot of fun engaging in, is around our REACH program.
I was going to mention that. Thank you.
So Aubrey Gomes and I have had several meetings just in looking about the structure of REACH, really looking at the assessment, how students get into REACH, how do we sustain it, and are we offering them exactly what they need for acceleration? And so it's been a great conversation. They haven't really looked at some of their guidelines and their criteria in several years, as Aubrey put it to me. And so we're really kind of looking at that, and I think too, they haven't necessarily had a solid home or some oversight because they're in multiple places. So Ms. Gomes is now part of my home. So we are having a lot, but we do a lot with Genius Hour at our elementary schools. Our library media techs are unbelievable at our elementary schools, and I have really been pushing to engage for higher level novels, and have been doing some book studies with students and things like that. So we do offer a lot of opportunities throughout the district, as well as that was one of the pushes for AP Psychology next year. AP Psychology, any student can take AP Psychology. It is one of those high interest AP courses. And so we're looking to expand what other opportunities can we bring in for our students to enrich our curriculum.
Thank you for saying everything that you did. I'm a big fan of Aubrey Gomes, so I'm very professional, very great at her job, and really cares about the kids. So I'm glad that you made mention of her and how closely you're working together. And the AP classes, I was interested in hearing about that as well. So appreciate everyone's hard work. Thank you.
All set. Jay Dow.
Yeah, I just had a comment more than a question. There's a lot of numbers here, and I appreciate the presentation and everything given to us. And looking over it all, obviously, I'm not sure if it was said, and so if it was, I'm sorry. But even if it was said, I want to highlight, taking a look at the attendance rates, I know obviously we say that that's a focus. Every single school in the district, the attendance rates have gone up from last year.
Yes,
There's not
they
a
have.
single school that the attendance rate has not gone up. Every single school in the district, chronic absenteeism has gone down. There's not a single one that is excluded from that list. So I just think, my comment is just that we're doing something right, where the kids are coming, and we're giving kids a reason to come, and whatever we're doing, we're trending in the right direction. And so I don't think we can stress that enough. every single school is making these improvements with getting the kids there, and that's step one to addressing all these other concerns. So I'm so happy to see that and just wanted to highlight that.
Thank you so much for saying that, because it truly has been a common focus, and there's a lot to be said when you have a common focus. And the principals have engaged in such great dialogue of sharing ideas and doing different things, and to see that effort pay off. And they have been doing shout outs to their staff and celebrating. We've had higher attendance on half days and things like that. So it is, you are right, it is something to celebrate because our kids are going to be in front of us.
Thank you. Any other comments? Anyone first time? Sandra Perrette?
Just again to reiterate what Mr. Dowd said, it certainly is, you can only have change when the children are in school.
That's right.
So to have them here in our building, only then will we see progress in other areas for all the efforts that everyone is making. So that is,
Yes.
that's a big step.
It is.
So thank you to everyone and to the students for coming.
All set? Anyone else first time? Don, second time.
Yes, just to piggyback on what Mrs. Perrette just said, based on our budget hearings, we're budgeting less money for subs and coverage time, so that without seeing the numbers for absentee on staff, it's got to be going down also. And it's got to be going down significantly because the budget's going down significantly.
So I can't really speak to that. I can speak to that I know Mr. Mayarecki has spending a lot of time in analyzing every budget line and seeing what we use every year and making sure that it's appropriately budgeted per line. So some of that funding could have been shifted to another line, or that we haven't traditionally been using it in our budget. Part of that is sometimes we're not able to get subs either.
But without getting subs, you would be increasing your coverage, and we're decreasing our coverage. That's what tells me that the attendance has got to be improving.
Right, and that's where I would go back to Mr. Mayarecki around kind of coverage pay and things like that as far as that's concerned.
Dr. Ware would like to comment.
Absolutely, I can speak to that. So so what I also will make note, because we couldn't do it any other way. We have a lot of teacher covering. Like, we have teachers covering our classes. So aside of the paras stepping into the teacher roles, which we are thankful for, we have teachers, especially at the secondary level, who are covering classes for teacher absences because we do not get subs. We used to contract with Kelly Services, which is a world-renowned subbing agency, and we stopped because we weren't getting the substitutes. What we learned is we started investing in building subs to have them at our buildings. So we invest in that, as well as we do compensate teachers for extra coverage outside of their contractual day. So that is something that I can't, without the numbers in front of me, I don't want to create the vision or illusion that because student attendance has gone up, that automatically that we need, because we haven't really fixated or focused on our teacher attendance. But I will tell you that if you speak to teachers, they will tell you that they cover each other.
Well, I was going by the fact that we reduced coverage period and sub coverage. So that told me that the attendance has to be improving if you're not covering as much.
I'm sorry, specifically?
In the budget, we reduced the amount of money we're putting aside for coverage.
Because we were using an agency. So you're 100% correct.
That told me that the attendance had to be improved.
Yeah. So I don't, and I know Mr. Myrecki's going to animate it.
I mean, I don't want
but
to
I just, no, I just
Mr.
want to
Myrecki.
clarify that, because if you run into teachers, they're going to tell you. That's why I want to be very clear that our teachers are stepping up and they are covering each other for absences.
Sort of getting off topic, but go ahead, John.
Sorry, thank you. So part of it also is, too, in some of these lines, it's not just coverage. You might have your sub pairs in there. You might have some other things that come in there. And one of the things that we're starting to do is trying to take some of those things and move it down to the school level. For end of the year reporting, the state provides things by school at district wide. So if you look in that particular line we're talking about, we have clubs in there. So a lot of our clubs are happening at our 4 big schools. Along with contractual obligations with art and music within the elementary schools. So what I mean by that is if they don't have it within their school day, they're required by contract to make sure they're providing an after-school club for either of those 2 disciplines. So what we've done this year is taken some out of that line, and as the superintendent said, and moved it elsewhere. So that elsewhere is moving it down to the after-school lines that you'll see that have increased at the school level. So that's one reason you're seeing, especially the lines you're talking about, Mr. Lamoth, are dropping down, but they're definitely going somewhere else to accommodate those costs.
But I do want to speak just about staff attendance because I do want to give out a huge shout out to Abby Tenzar as she leads our mental health task force, and they've been doing a lot of activities around social emotional learning and social emotional activities for our staff to engage them and to make sure that we are taking care of them as well.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions about
Sorry, it should be a quick one. hopefully.
Deanna Russo?
I have a question just on the word targets that you use related to the accountability data. This is all really great data, so I just want to make sure I'm understanding how the targets are established. I think on the same page you had mentioned that MCAS data is not live data, so I just wanted to make sure that there is multi-factors incorporated in the word target or who's setting that.
So what happens is the state sets every year for us a target for improvement, and that formula, we'd have to really sit down and talk about. It's a very convoluted formula, I'm going to be honest, because it deals with multiple years of data and formulas and percentages and things like that. But what happens is that the state looks at where you are and says, we want you to improve. So this is your target for next year. They know that we're not going to suddenly turn around everybody and make them meeting expectations next year. It's about making sure our trajectory is up. So we want to make sure we're moving in forward movement up that hill. And so it's that target that the state set that we made significant progress on. So right now the state is setting our new targets for this year of what will be tested on, and they'll let us know the progress towards those targets when the results are given to us in September.
So is that calculation just MCAS data or a variety of factors?
It's just MCAS. I'm like, well, actually, no, it's not. So it's attendance, it's growth, it's achievement. It's around what offerings we have. So AP, we get additional points for some of our higher level classes, as well as any of our affiliations with the colleges. So there's a lot that goes into that formula across the board. But when they calculate what our growth is, they look at it and say that they use the same formula to calculate where are we next year.
Okay. Well, that's great then that we're moving ahead across a bunch of different data. So.
It was nice to see.
Yeah.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Thank you for that wonderful presentation.
Thank you so much.
On to our agenda. We'll move on to approval of minutes 24-5-1.
Move that the minutes of the regular meeting of the school committee held on April 17th, 2024 be approved.
Don, can I get a motion?
Motion to approve.
I have a motion to approve. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, we are all here and present. All in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Reports 24-5-2.
Report on personnel action taken. I would like to invite Ms. Deb Green up to the podium.
Good evening, everyone. It's a thin personnel report this time. I like to think this is the calm before the hiring storm. But we have 2 appointments, a teacher and a senior clerk, 1 resignation and 1 retirement that I'm sure Dr. Ware is going to talk about. But in addition, we also have 80 postings up on Power School that need to be filled. Last week, we had our job fair at Chicopee Comp where we attracted about 30 people. And I do believe from that, we may have gotten a teacher and a paraprofessional and a couple other people. So in that respect, it was a successful afternoon. In addition, there is also the job fair at the Basketball Hall of Fame on Monday night that we will be attending. And also as an update, we are moving to online onboarding through Power School. We have started that test run with a couple new employees this week and seeing how that runs. From there, we'll be moving to online records and getting all of our files online, just to keep you updated on that process. Thank you.
Thank you.
And at this time, I'd like to recognize our retiree. We have one this evening, Miss Olga Rumyansed. I think I butchered that name. I apologize. But I think I was told she's affectionately called Miss Olga, as our chemistry teacher of 18 years at Chicopee High School. Olga has been a dedicated chemistry teacher for many years at Chicopee High. She has been instrumental in preparing many of our students who have gone on to major in chemistry in college. Olga was well deserving of the Partners in Excellence Award this year through Mass Insight, who recognized AP teachers for outstanding work. Olga's commitment to her students and dedication to the science department will be missed as she retires. The whole entire community at Chicopee High School and some from central office wish her well in the next chapter of her life. Thank you so much for your 18 years of service.
Thank you. Any other comments? Sandra first.
Just, well, congratulations to Miss Olga on retirement. And also we have 25 individuals going to various education programs, and the staff range from the Director of Budget and Finance, a wellness specialist, CTE information technology teacher, a drafting teacher, a Spanish translator interpreter, the supervisor of nurses, a substance abuse counselor, the assistant superintendent and the superintendent, an inclusion teacher, and most of these programs are one or a couple of days, and they're in Massachusetts, and one is in Connecticut. And the program titles range from the Massachusetts Association of Business Officials Conference, the Technical Education Community Regional Conference, Leading for Equity in School Health, the DESE Literacy Leaders Network, Partners in Equity Leadership Conference, School Nurses Helping Students with Asthma, Allergies, and Anaphylaxis, and then there's also the New England Dairy School Nutrition Experts Forum. So there's a variety of education programs that our teachers and administrators are participating in.
Jay?
Yeah, I just had a question. I'm not sure if Dr. Ware can answer, if we need Deb, but with the 30 people-ish that attended the hiring event last week, I know we had talked about having hiring events at Dulong, and there was a talk about moving it to Chicopee Comp so that it was a more centralized, more accessible place. So I was just curious if we felt that that was successful in attracting more candidates, more people there, or if it really didn't make a difference, I guess, necessarily by moving it to the new location.
Yeah, so I'm going to actually ask Ms. Green to come back up, but I will tell you that that is a good question because that's something we haven't deliberated over yet. So I'll let Ms. Green answer that.
Actually, thinking of the two that we had at Dulong, we had one on a Saturday morning. We then had one at Dulong on a weeknight. And then this past one was at Chicopee Comp on a weeknight or a week afternoon from 3 to 6. And they attracted roughly about the same amount of people. We had probably 20 people come to Dulong each time, and this was roughly about 30 people coming to Chicopee Comp. Yep.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? 24-5-3.
Report on the Finance and Budget Subcommittee.
Yeah. I think.
Deanna.
So I can give a quick overview of the most recent Finance and Budget Subcommittee meeting we had. I'd say it is definitely an evolving process, and we are very thoroughly going through the entire budget. So in this particular meeting, we went in detail through the grants that we expect or are forecasting to receive based on information both at a federal and state level. So we went into great detail about that. Also, we continued to discuss a variety of expenses and changes that we're still working through at both school and at the administrative level of different expenses. So nothing final at this point. I think at the conclusion of the meeting, we were left where we were planning on having 2 additional meetings related to the budget. So still definitely a work in process, but a lot of hard work and attention are going throughout all the lines in the budget.
Thank you. Any other comments? We'll move on to new business 24-5-4.
Move that the bills warrant S041924 totaling $1,306,647.62 be approved.
Connie, can I get a motion?
Motion to approve.
to approve. Jay, could you read the warrants into the official record, please?
Absolutely, Mayor. So tonight we'll be voting on 2 warrants. I'll read the totals for the 2 warrants combined, and then we will vote on them individually. For athletics, $2,895. Food services, $206,159. General expenses, $116,446. Grants, $661,210. Maintenance, $102,688. Utilities, $349,312. Special education, $147,564. Student activities, $786. Transportation, $909,097, and sales tax, $704, for a grand total of the 2 warrants, $2,496,863.
Thank you. Any discussion on the first warrant?
Motion to approve.
Seeing none, we'll take a roll call.
Mr. Brooks?
Yes.
Mr. Lamothe?
Yes.
Mr. Bernard?
Yes.
Mrs. Lopes? Yes. Mr.
Yes.
Zatella? Mayor View?
Yes.
Ms. Russo? Yes. Mr. Barcelo?
Yes.
Mr. Doubt?
Yes.
Mrs. Perrette?
Yes.
Mrs. Schofield?
Yes.
11 yes.
Motion carries. 24-5-5.
Move that the, oh,
Could Mr. Zatella give his vote? I don't think any of us heard it.
I thought he did.
He did, he said.
Motion to approve.
No, they just want to know if you said yes or not.
I did. Say yes.
He
Thank you.
stated yes. 24-5-5.
move that the bills warrant S042624 totaling $1,190,216.25 be approved.
Grace, can I get a motion?
Motion to approve.
I have a motion to approve. Any discussion on the second warrant? Seeing none, we'll take a roll call.
Mr. Brooks?
I abstain.
Mr. Lamothe?
Yes.
Mr. Bernard?
Yes.
Mrs. Lopes?
Yes.
Mr. Zatella?
Yes.
Mayor View?
Yes.
Ms. Russo? Yes. Mr. Barcelo?
Yes.
Mr. Doubt?
Yes.
Mrs. Perrette?
Yes.
Mrs. Schofield?
Abstain.
9 yes, 2 abstained.
Motion carries. 24-5-6.
Move that the memorandum of agreement between the Chicopee Education Association, Unit D, and the Chicopee School Committee be approved and the chairperson be authorized to sign.
Susan, can I get a motion?
Motion to approve.
I have a motion to approve the memorandum of agreement between the Chicopee Education Association, Unit D, and the Chicopee School Committee. Any discussion? Don?
I believe this was just a correction from when we approved the contracts earlier.
No,
No.
no. This was the additional information that came from executive session in regard to Unit D. So it is in addition to. It is, but it isn't. So it was accepted, and you guys had to talk about it. So it's an addition.
Okay.
Do we need more clear? Is everyone comfortable with voting? Anyone? Okay. Any comments? Any further comments? Just for the record, school committee member Ron Bernard has left the room. Any discussion? Grace Schofield.
I just want to comment that it kind of saddens me that it took so long for this to happen. So I understand reasons why, but, you know, in good faith, we fought to show the value of our employees, and for whatever reasons, I wish this could have happened sooner.
Susan Sotelo.
I'm glad the additional pay is retroactive to July 1st, 2023. It softens the blow a little.
Any other discussion? Any other comments? We'll take a roll call.
Mr. Brooks?
Yes.
Mr. Lamothe?
Yes.
Mrs. Lopes?
Yes.
Mr. Zatella?
Yes.
Mayor View,
Yes.
Ms. Russo? Yes. Mr. Barcelo?
Yes.
Mr. Doubt?
Yes.
Mrs. Perrette?
Yes.
Mrs. Schofield?
Yes.
10 yes, 1 out of chair.
Motion carries. We'll move on to 24-5-7.
Move that the second reading of the intramural interscholastic athletics policy, J35, be approved as recommended by the Policy and Human Resources Subcommittee.
Check, can I get a motion?
To approve
Have a motion.
as recommended.
Apologize. Sorry, motion to approve the second reading. Any discussion? Susan?
I just want to read something to everyone. A student must secure during the last marking period preceding the contest a passing grade in 4 subjects at Chicopee Academy, and maintain an average of 65% in all subjects taken. We are removing the sentence, a one-time waiver may be utilized by appealing to the principal. But I've always been disappointed in our athletic policy, and I have had conversations, not recently, but with Mr. Mackin and previous athletic directors in our system, and I've always been disappointed in a 65, that a student can get a D in 5 classes, and still play sports. I wish we held them to higher standards academically.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Sure, Sandra Perrette.
Is that pretty standard that a waiver, that there isn't a waiver in other school systems?
I can't speak to other school systems, unfortunately. I don't know what the discussion was leading up to that. So that's a good question. I apologize. I don't have the answer right now.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
I can answer if you like. The waiver was originally put in place when the regulations changed and made the regulations actually stricter. So our standards are actually higher than MIA. They're slightly higher than what they require for MIA. And so when they made it a little stricter, we put the one-time waiver in. So it was never supposed to be permanent. It was supposed to be the transition from the higher recommendations, and it just never was revisited as it was supposed to. So it really was originally supposed to be a one-year thing as we were going to higher standards. So that's why it was revisited. And no, other districts don't really do that. Haven't done that in a while. It's not a general practice. Yeah, and as Ms. Bichard says, most school districts go by MIA standards. So we actually are higher than they are.
Higher than the MIAA?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Don?
Is there any statistics of how many waivers we've granted, or is it just that we haven't been granting them, period?
Mr. Mackin does have those, and both high schools have kept records on how much we've granted over the years. I don't have that off the top of my head, but Mr. Mackin was keeping track of them with the principals.
Okay, thank you.
Any other discussion? Seeing none, we'll take a roll call.
Mr. Brooks?
Yes.
Mr. Lamothe?
Yes.
Mr. Bernard?
Yes.
Mrs. Lopes?
No.
Mr. Zatella?
Yes.
Mayor View?
Yes.
Ms. Russo? Yes. Mr. Barcelo?
Yes.
Mr. Doubt?
Yes.
Mrs. Perrette?
Yes.
Mrs. Schofield?
Yes.
10 yes, 1 no.
Motion carries. And I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn?
We have a motion to adjourn. All in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. Have a great night.